Hi! Welcome to Eye of the Beholder painting tutorials. Today I'll be painting a Drider from Frameworks. A link for buying the model will be in the description if you're interested. For this particular Drider, I asked a friend of mine who happens to be an entomologist what his favorite spider types were. There were a lot of very interesting options for color scheme and pattern, but I ultimately ended up by using this photo of a demon orb weaver spider for reference. I couldn't copy the pattern directly since the Drider's abdomen is highly textured and doesn't work for most patterns, so I mostly just used the photo for inspiration. To begin, I assembled the entire model except for the hand with the magical energy stream coming off of it because it would get in the way of my painting. I later decided not to use this hand at all because I thought it would cause there to be too much clutter on the model. I primed the entire Drider in black, and then once it dried, I took a white paint and an old stiff brush and dry brushed the entire thing so the raised edges of the model could show through better. Usually you do this if you plan to use thinned or even contrast paints so that the detail of the model doesn't get lost as you paint. I kept the tips of the legs fully black since they would be the darkest section of my planned gradient and therefore wouldn't need all that much highlighting. Before starting the painting fully, I decided to test my idea on one leg and only with a couple of colors. I made a mixture of black into Cantor blue and made my dark blue tone, and then I made a deep purple mixture by adding some Screamer pink in there. I went back and forth about how far up the leg I wanted the gradient to start and stop, but I finally decided that the front claw being almost entirely blue, and then the purple will go to just above the knee area. I applied these colors quickly and at the exact same time so that I could blend them together smoothly on the model before they dry. If you weren't already aware, this is called wet blending. It's a very useful technique for smooth gradients like this. Once I was happy with the blue and the purple, I added some corn red into the pinkish end of my gradient and accidentally made a bi flag. I wet blended this new tone into the purple and painted the rest of the leg all the way up to the hip joint with it. Then I decided that the tip of the leg wasn't dark enough, so I simply added some black into my blue and repainted the tippy toes. Since I was happy with all of that, I just repeated the exact same process with all the 7 other legs. It didn't take as much time as I expected, and the results actually looked pretty nice. With all the legs done, I added some more Screamer pink into the red tone and lined the, Look, I don't want to call it the Drider, but that's kind of what it is. Then while it was still moist, I added my dark blue mix and made the whole thing a kind of purplish tone with pinks around the edges. I also want to take this time to apologize for that a lot of the videos being poorly lit or out of focus. I haven't done filming in a while and my setup isn't exactly A+ right now, but I'm working on it. I also took parts of my blue and purple tones and covered the spider body's shoulder area as well as any parts near the Drider's humanoid section since these will mostly be caught in shadow anyway. For the carapace, I wanted to get a good base tone down before doing any of the yellow designs my reference has. So I made a gradient on my palette of my pure pinkish red mix, that same mix plus a little bit of black, and then pure black. It was about at this time that I remembered that holding a model with your fingers is a great way to rub off the paint you just spent an hour laying down, so I just used some white tack and stuck it to a random bottle. I hadn't painted the stomach at this point, but I'll do it at the end. I lined the bottom of the carapace in the brightest tone, wet blended it in with my darker red, and then painted the majority of it with a blackish pink. I planned to have it be pure black, but when it was wet blending it, it was sort of the dark pink, and I realized that I liked that gradient more. So the pure black is on the very top, but most of it is just a very dark mixture. And while all this was drying, I took this opportunity to base all of the Drider's humanoid skin in just pure black. I gave that quite a while to fully dry before working on the yellow pattern. For my base tone, I mixed some Scrag Brown into some Averland Sunset for a darker yellow. For this, I tried to create a pattern that was similar to the reference photo of the actual spider, but also nicely followed a placement of the armored carapace so I didn't overwhelm the model with too many details. I had a thin, brightly colored coat going on over almost pure black, so this took quite a few coats until I was satisfied. While waiting for the first coat to dry, I took pure Eshin Grey and painted the cobweb-like portions of the humanoid body on their stomach and on their forearms. I also used this grey for the hair. For the leather breastplate and belt, I based it in pure Rhinox hide, which I would mostly regret later, so I would suggest basing leather areas like this in a darker brown. Then I took my dark metallic Iron Warriors and based the sword, crown, and the shoulder pad. For the gold on the bracers and the hilt of the sword, I made a half and half mixture of Retributor gold and Rhinox hide. Here's a bit of my second layer of yellow, but I did most of that off screen. As you can see, this is where I glued on the extra empty hand. I think it makes it look a lot better and cleaner without the huge magic effect. I caught it up with the other hand using the same gold and black. Now to highlight the legs, I wanted to go color by color, starting with the blue. I started with black, added Cantor blue, and then periodically added an Adolf Guard blue in the gradient you can see here. I highlighted the black part with just a very, very dark blue. I also used some of these colors on the Drider. As I said before, the blue only went up to the end of the large claw part of the leg before it turned into purple. I used some vague blues further up the leg, but it's all a matter of opinion about how far up you want to go. And here's the final product of the blue highlights. I'm sorry again for my technical setup, it's kinda hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm in the market for a better light and a tripod. With the blue done, I went on to the purple next. I only used 3 colors of highlights for this area because the area of purple is a lot smaller, as well as it's only an intermediary area, and I wanted the blues to stand out more anyway. And these are the colors that I made, using a base mixture of my darker blue and screamer pink, then adding some Gene Stealer purple for the brighter, more pale highlights. I might have gone a little bit too bright with the purple, but I didn't fix it and I'm not going to now, so... For the pink highlights, I used a base highlight of Screamer Pink, a little Cantor Blue, and then a little black. Then I added some more Screamer Pink for my midtones, and then some Emperor's Children for my brightest. I also used my pink midtones to shrink the amount of area the purple was covering because I wasn't happy with the tiny amount of pink that was being left on the legs. This is actually a step that I regret doing, but I shaded all of the yellow parts with some Seraphim Sepia. I regret it because it made all of my shadow tones look too glossy, but it might have improved if I were to thin the wash more. Either that, or I could have manually put the shadows where I wanted them with a darker yellow tone. As I was letting that dry, I wanted to highlight the rest of the carapace. I made a Screamer Pink black mix and highlighted the bottom of the carapace where the pink areas are, adding in more Screamer Pink the brighter I went. For the black parts on top, I simply added an Eshin gray until it was as bright as I wanted. As I was doing that, I realized that the pink was going higher up the sides than I think I wanted it to look, so I corrected it back down using a black mid-tone. The wash was dry enough now, so I used a slightly brighter mix of my base tone, then carefully highlighted the raised edges and the highly detailed lumps and bumps. My midtone after that was pure Everland Sunset. And my brightest were editions of Uriel Yellow. With the spider parts done, it was now time to start on the humanoid. I went with the brown leather first because I was most concerned about it turning out well. If I'm honest, I don't actually like the final piece, but I was satisfied enough. I'll find some more time to practice some leather later on some different models. What I used was a Rhinox hide and black mix for the darker areas, pure Rhinox hide for mid areas, and then almost pure Baneblade brown for all of my stark highlights. I kind of randomly played around with the tones on those for a while before I was done, and I lined the belt and the raised edges with a shining silver color mixed with a little black. For the sword, I prepared 3 colors to make a clean wet blending gradient. My dark iron warriors, pure shining silver, and then shining silver with some white in it. This is my process for painting most swords. Swords on most minis that I've seen tend to have 2 slanted sides with a lifted edge in the middle, so what I do is I place my brightest highlight on the tip of the sword on only one half of the blade. On the other half of the blade, I place my brightest highlight on the bottom of the sword. Then I wet blend those 2 tones into my intermediate tone in the middle of the sword, and then that tone blends into my darkest on the opposite end. The 2 gradients are exactly the same, but they're just flipped to create a striking contrast and a metallic effect. And once I have those colors set down, I'll either use my brightest tone or even a pure white and then just run the edge of my brush along the sides of the sword and the lifted edge in the middle to cause it to brightly stand out. I feel like that was a lot of words, but god I hope it made sense. But this is a good technique that I've used for a while and it makes really good looking swords. For the shoulder pad, I use the same colors and similar techniques. Keep the shadows very, very dark and keep the highlights very, very bright. Non-metallic metal is a very difficult painting technique and it takes a lot of practice, but I promise it's worth it. I also took my brightest silver from that and added some random highlights to the lining of the leather chest piece, as well as the crown. Once I was semi-satisfied with all that, I colored in the spider motif and the symbol on the crown with my dark gold. I went to the hair next and used an Eshin Grey and Celeste Grey mixture to cover the large bobs in the hair and then added white for my brightest highlights. Hair is extremely difficult for me to get right, but this is what I do. The majority of the hair I leave untouched. The curls that I think will catch the most light will have very bright colors on them, and I think I achieved it pretty well here. I also dry brushed my Celeste Grey mixture on the cobweb areas. To highlight the skin, all I used was some Eshin Grey into my black, and then Celeste Grey into that when I wanted to get my brightest highlights. God, it looks like I have to really try to understand how the focus on my camera works. Well, whether you can see it clearly or not, I used pure Celeste Grey for the eyes, and then I dotted in some white for the pupils. And that's everything on the top of the model. Now I just have to do the stomach. There was a small area between the stomach and the carapace, and I just painted that black. To base the whole thing, I just made a black and screamer pink base tone. Oh, and that's where I shook her hand a little too hard and her arm fell off. Then I took my black and Cantor blue and wet blended it randomly on the raised parts of the stomach. For highlights, I just used the same blues as I did for the legs. I then very kindly glued the arm back on. And that's all! I really hope you enjoyed this painting tutorial. I'm planning on doing a lot more of these in the future, so if you're interested, then stick around. I also do commission work if you or anyone that you know is interested in that, and I'm thinking of starting to do some lessons if I get good enough. If you have any thoughts, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. Thank you!